So in this episode, we're going to go through how storytelling can help boost your business. It can bring you some more deeper audience connection. So people actually really want to be part of your community. They're not just like the like and leave. They comment, they message you. Storytelling is really key for that. And it's how some people who have barely any audience at all do better than those who have a huge one because they've connected in a deeper way. So in this episode, it's a very practical one. I'm going to be sharing with you 10 storytelling tips, some ways that you can integrate storytelling into your marketing, and then also 3 mini storytelling challenges to get you already using this skill. And also you can use it for your podcast, for your social media, your blog, whatever it is. This episode is going to give you that. As I go through this, I want you to think about the ways that you could storytell in your business. And if you think podcasting might be one of them, I really invite you to consider Podcast Alchemy. So this is the program I run. You can see more details on her first 3 years. Waitlist is up there to know more. So let's start with power of storytelling and your very first challenge. It essentially allows your brand to really grow because people associate emotions and memory and imagery, all of which is more powerful for them, to your brand instead of you just educating and then memorizing facts. So your first storytelling challenge is going to be to tell the story of your business. What inspired you to start? What was the mission behind it? What is the impact you wanted to make? What's your purpose? This is a story you've probably heard a lot and you've maybe told before, but I really want you to think about that as we go through because this is the one that people need to hear the most. I'm going to give you mine. So when I started my fitness business, I was coming back from Brazil and I was feeling, a little bit burnt out because I'd been in corporate. And I remember I went to this boot camp in New York City, Central Park, and we were doing reverse bear crawls up this hill. And this guy in his late 40s in spandex was our coach. And he kept talking about how he was making our bodies sexy again and for us to work harder if we wanted to look good. And I remember thinking that this felt so bad compared to how I felt when I was in Brazil and really comfortable in my body. So I thought I could do this better. And that led to me creating my first ever business, which was a boot camp in Central Park that was about feeling good. That is my story. You can kind of visualize it, right? Reverse bear crawls, older man in spandex, me saying, nope, I can do this better. For our second storytelling challenge, it goes around emotional engagement. So this is where we want to go deeper into the personal experience that you've had, the challenges, the wins. You're connecting on that human level. So people are not just scrolling by. The first story I gave you was more visual, but now we want to look at engagement, really connecting emotionally. So what you want to do, number 2 challenge, is to share a pivotal moment in your journey with a big obstacle. So how did you feel? What steps did you take to overcome it? What are the lessons that you learned? Because the biggest thing I have seen through any content that exists that does well is that the more vulnerable you can be, the more empathy you get from your listeners, from your audience, the more trust. So the story is the challenge. Again, you have probably done this before, but I want you to think about it a little more strategically. Mine, I am going to talk to you about when I shut down my fitness business in New York and moved to the UK. I moved my business across the ocean. The first week I made tons of flyers. I was really excited about it. It took a lot of artistic time. There was no Canva back then. So I was really trying to pick all the images. I had to get them printed at a typical print office and I posted them everywhere. Cafes, I walked into studios and I set up a class and I said, this is a free class. Anyone can come to a fitness class. And I felt really excited because I had this concept that worked in New York and I was bringing it to a different place. I show up to the studio where I'm hosting the free class and I'm on a high. I'm setting up all of the little props, the cones, getting the music ready, just kind of dancing around, excited. I think I was doing it at 6 p.m. No one's there. 6:05, No one's there. 6:10, I checked. Did I put the right details down? No one's there. I waited there until 7:30. I even paid extra because I only had an hour in that studio rented, and I felt so destroyed. I felt like I made this huge move. I shut down my business and I have nothing and no one cares. And it was the moment that I realized I have to do things differently here. And it was the beginning of me starting to partner with other instructors, other studios, and other brands. And that was a lot more helpful. So that is my story of my challenge. Do you have something like that where you can connect to, this feeling of crap, what have I done? And reinforce that story again and again. This is why I love podcasting, because you can keep telling those stories and really getting people in. Our third challenge is going to be on differentiating your brand. So this is how you make your brand different. The storytelling aspect. This is your unique value proposition because no one else has your story. No one else has lived it the way you have. And in a really saturated market where people are doing a lot of the same things, this makes you stand out. It shows your approach, how it's different, your values, your vision. So storytelling challenge number 3 is called Not Like the Rest. And I want you to contrast your business approach with some common industry practices. Explain how your methods, your unique methods, have led to better outcomes for your clients and your customers. This story is not told enough. When you do this, you are going to see that it immediately alienates some people, which is fine. We don't need everybody. And it draws other people in. And when you don't do this enough, you get kind of everyone, but no one really is engaged. It's the likers, not the commenters, not the messengers. My storytelling challenge, Not Like the Rest, is going to be about the podcast that I started called Feel Good Naked, my first show, and how I wanted to change the narrative around women's health and confidence. I saw all of this content out there on fasting and detoxes and losing weight, looking good after XYZ age. I saw all of this stuff. And this was also during COVID. And I remember thinking, this is not the way to encourage people to exercise, to maybe eat differently by shaming them. It doesn't work. And so I came up with this concept which was, yes, you can be healthy. Doesn't require counting. Very different from fitness industry normal stuff. And it allows you to feel good in your body finally where everything else hasn't. Here are the examples of my own clients. Here are stories from other people who did it differently. That is why that show shot up to the top 200, because it was different. And the fitness, health and lifestyle section, that podcast category, is very competitive. There are a lot of shows in it. And I really believe that that is what made the difference for me. So think about, how are you not like the rest? Now, something else where storytelling is really helpful is it enhances brand loyalty because people really get to know who you are. It builds community. They become an advocate for you because they understand your story. So your challenge here, your brand loyalty challenge, your story one, is you are going to create a narrative, a story that invites your audience to join you on your journey. So you're going to share milestones. You're going to share maybe different achievements, make them feel part of your success. So what is a story of one of your successes or a few or that journey? For me, an example that I can give is a really recent one. When I started this podcast, her first 3 years in 2024, I had wanted to start it 6 months earlier and I had actually done 6 months of interviews with women around the world, carrying my mic everywhere. And I then in January got this horrible medical condition where I couldn't talk for 3 months. And so for the first 3 months of that year, my plan of launching this show went to crap. And I didn't know, there's no timeline of when you get your voice back. And I had to just kind of keep believing that I would be okay. And eventually I had to make the choice to start releasing those episodes, hoping that by the time they were all done, 6 months, I could speak again. And I think it was 1 month before the last episode aired that I could. So this is my journey. And then this show ended up actually also getting to a top 200 for entrepreneurship. So it was a journey, right? It was not I stopped this and it shot up to number one. We didn't have a Mel Robbins story here. This was like a crapshoot story. That's the kind of story I want you to share. Now notice that this has a failing, or I guess you could call it like an unforeseen circumstance. And then you see me going through, that's the hero's journey. Consistently tell this stuff again and again. Put it everywhere so people really understand what you're doing. In fact, if you haven't already, one of the 3 top pins on your social media should be your story. Now, I'm going to give you some storytelling tips because I think this is the part that we always struggle with. Now, when you're creating a story which really is compelling and people like, it needs to have authenticity. It needs to have a relatability, a clear structure, and emotional resonance so people can really relate to you and your emotions. You will have seen that in some of the challenges that we have in this episode. So first, start with a strong hook. Begin with a surprising fact, a provocative question, a vivid scene, something that encourages people to keep going. You know, fiction writers are amazing at this. If you look at the first line of some of your favorite fiction books, you will see this kind of hook. And you'll notice that anytime I do a podcast episode, I always have a hook. Number 2, evoke emotion. So include emotions in your story, what you felt, because this is stuff that people might have also felt. We're very good at saying this happened and then this. What we struggle with a little bit is saying, I felt this. I was deep in the trenches and I had this horrible feeling in my gut that things weren't going to work out. You know, when the whole world just seems like it's against you and you can't get motivated. Those kind of emotions are what bring your story alive. Number 3, highlight the benefits to the audience from the very beginning. So you'll notice I do this in the podcast a lot. I will give the hook, quick overview, and then I will say, what are you going to get from this? Why do you care? Because that's ultimately what people want to know. 4, vivid imagery. And for this, you're painting kind of pictures, not just saying words. So you're helping them visualize this scene. This leads to more engagement and more retention. And if you look at your favorite content creators, they're very good at doing this. So imagery when you're telling a story. What did you see? What did you look like? Things that you think don't matter, they really do. In fact, even with podcasts, which are primarily audio, the imagery is the most important thing. Number 5, incorporate anecdotes. So I always tell my podcast alchemy students, the clients I work with on launching their shows, that in general, you want to have a story for every point you make because that's how it comes alive. So if you're going to make a point, what's the story behind it? Number 6, engage the senses. This is similar to the imagery, but we want to talk about sounds and smells and taste and textures because then the story becomes more alive. I'm going to give you a quick example here. Let me tell you about the time that I had to pitch my very first big client. I went in there to the studio and I had my little portfolio of stuff and I laid it down on the desk and I showed them and I just waited to see what they would say. It's not a really powerful story, but if I say instead, I could feel the taste of spit up in my throat from fear. I could feel the sweat on my fingers as I walked in. I could smell kind of that stale wood of an old office, and I could hear the clang of the air conditioning going, and I just felt like, I hope I can speak louder than that. See how that story is a lot more dynamic? And that's just kind of one I threw together. So remembering, engage the senses. Number 7, include a callback. This is a movie technique and I got this from Sticky Blogging. If you ever want to get good at blogging, she's amazing. Sticky Blogging, she also teaches SEO. Callback is a movie technique. So you essentially talk about some sort of phrase or element in the beginning of your story, and then later on, you mentioned it again. So it creates almost like this circle or the arc that feels very satisfying to the listener. So I might start talking about the red balloon I saw in the sky the day I went out to the park with my mom. And this is a lesson on freedom. And then I end the story with, and I always remember that red balloon. So this is also a really easy device to help you make your stories more powerful. Number 8. Clear call to action. So important when you're doing a story for your business. So whether it's subscribe to your podcast, share your content, join your program, apply the lessons learned, or something like that. Make sure the call to action is very clear and make sure it's there. Number 9, maintain simplicity and focus. We really struggle with this sometimes, but trying to keep the story straightforward and centered on the key messages, it's very easy to ramble. And while some people like that when they listen to you or read your stuff, a lot of people don't. So being very straightforward. Something I like to do is I will write it once or I'll record it once. And then after I go in and edit it, because it's 2 different brain levels, right? One is the creative, one is the critic. You don't want them going together, but they work really well when there's some time separating them. Number 10, show the transformation. We know this. Highlight the growth that you have seen from the people that you have worked with. Really share those stories and how they have changed so much. What has made the difference there? Now let's go into really practical stuff here, is storytelling for marketing, because most of you are entrepreneurs, business owners, creators, and you want to tell a good story, you want engagement, but ultimately like you're marketing something. And I want to first give you some tips from podcasting because it's really great for storytelling. When you are telling your story, the way that you can really stand out is with your voice. If you notice, like some people are really good with changing their voice intonation with their pauses. They're the people that the kids want to tell them the nighttime story. That's what you want to do as well. It makes it very powerful when you're telling a story. This is the audio stuff or video, right? Even a reel. Changing up the voice, the body language, etc. Engage your audience. So I like to use a lot of storytelling methods like rhetorical questions. Or just questions, encouraging participation, even if you can't directly respond to me. So I included these challenges for you in this episode because I know that you'll hear them and you'll feel a bit more interactive. You'll feel like this is helpful. Those are some techniques that can really work. Overall, even beyond podcasting, what you want to think about is this: be consistent in your messaging. Leverage multiple platforms. So I know we like to focus on one, and I totally agree with that. We don't want to be overwhelmed, but repurpose. I have got this main podcast, but it also, one podcast episode creates my blog, creates my reels, creates audio clips for me, creates YouTube shorts. You're telling your story. It takes time. Use multiple places. Also use SEO. So something I often do, and I teach people who are starting podcasts to do this, is when you're creating a podcast episode, use your creativity, come up with your ideas, but then go into these keyword research platforms and see, are people asking questions about this? Do they even care? Because if you can use SEO, if you can use what people are searching for and tie it into your story, you're going to do so much better. Now, if you're hearing all of this and you're thinking, I really love storytelling, I want to do it on podcasting, I am going to invite you to do Podcast Alchemy. I think some of us, we feel really called to share our voice, but we're really afraid. And what I do in this program is I give you the confidence to do it easily and quickly. I help you become the thought leader that you want to be and use podcasting for your growth. It's an amazing way to develop your storytelling skills. You'll be amazed at how much better you become as a writer. Your newsletters get better, your social media gets better, even your sales calls get better because you really learn how to tell stories. If you feel like maybe I want to start a podcast, but I don't know, I'm going to encourage you to go to Her First 3 Years website, and you will see that there's a Start a Podcast Alchemy waitlist. And you can sign up for the waitlist so you know when it opens to get all the details. It is something I try to keep fairly small because I want to make sure you get a lot of support. But I really believe in the power of storytelling. As we've gone over here, you have 3 storytelling challenges. You have 10 storytelling tips, and I've given you some ways that you can use it in your marketing. So please use this stuff, make it actionable, do some things that really, really call to you, and some stuff that makes your brand stand out. Thank you so much for listening, and I will see you in the next one.